Hi, y'all. I'm there. So, like 2 minutes ago, I just did a review on Rise of the Guardians. Sorry about the really crappy review if you just watched that. And I would like to note that there are some characters that I actually didn't mention. There's a little boy named Jamie, who's actually a really big part of the movie. Really sorry that I didn't mention him. I completely forgot until afterwards. But the movie that we are going to be doing right now is on my top 5 favorite movies of all time ever. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. So this movie is actually a book adaptation. There is a book by the same name, by Ransom Riggs, and that's how I actually came to find out about this movie. I was like halfway through the book, and then I started watching the movie, and it's absolutely amazing. I love the book, love the movie, love it all. So, my phone is on 15%. So, this movie is amazing. So, it starts out with a young boy named Jacob Portman, and he thinks his life is completely ordinary. And Jacob Portman is played by Asa Butterfield, whom I did not know was British. He pulls off an amazing American accent. But anyway, so, you see my downstairs room, isn't it glorious? But anyway, so Jacob Portman is totally convinced that his life will never change, that he's going to be stuck in the same ordinary cycle for the rest of his life, and that's just the way that it's going to be. But one day, his grandpa ends up dying. Grandpa Portman, whom I have no idea who he's played by. I'm sorry. But, his grandpa ends up dying. And before he died, he called him being like, don't come here, because Jacob was heading over to his grandpa's house, Grandpa Portman's house. And he's like, don't come here, they're after me. And he's like, did you take your pills this morning? And he's like, where's the keys to my gun cabinet? And then it was this whole big deal. But anyway, Jacob ends up coming to his house, and he finds his grandpa in the woods with, like, a steak knife almost, or like a steak fork thingy. And he rolls him over, and his eyes are missing. And his grandpa's last words are, find the bird in the loop, or, like, go to the island. The bird will explain everything. Something along those lines. September 3rd, 1943, though, is one of the things that stuck out to Jacob. And Jacob and his grandpa were really, really close. I've seen this movie 6 times, so I know what I'm talking about. But Jacob and his grandpa were really, really close. So he doesn't want to just write off his grandpa's last words as being crazy. And Jacob has a feeling that they're true because his grandpa used to tell him bedtime stories about how he joined the army in the 1940s during World War II. He fought off monsters, but pretty soon as Jacob got older, he was like, these stories are totally not true. So he ends up going to the island. It's a little island off the coast of Wales. And he ends up finding, lo and behold, the children's home that his grandpa always talked about in his stories. The home for peculiar children, with the headmistress being Miss Peregrine. So he goes to the home, and half of it is gone. It's like totally bombed out. Vines are all over the place. There's glass everywhere. It looks like a total war zone. Exactly. And he's like, well, what happened? And one of the older people on the island was like, September 3rd, 1943, a German air raid, a bomb fell right on the roof, and there wasn't a single survivor. He's like, oh, that makes no sense. So the next day, he ends up going back to the children's home. And he's like, how is it even possible that there wasn't a single survivor? And of course, the place is completely bombed out. So he's searching through the house, and all of a sudden, he turns around. There's this girl there. And she's like, Abe. And she has an English accent. She really is an English actress. I don't know her name. That's what she looks like. Her name in the movie, lo and behold, is Emma Bloom. And her and Olive, another one of the main characters, ended up switching peculiarities from the book to the movie. So Olive's peculiarity is air. She can make it do whatever she wants. And she's like, oh, cool. But anyway, so she's like, Abe, and he totally loses it. He runs all over the house, and he sees, like, kids hiding behind doors and a bunch of other stuff. and he ends up falling and like knocking himself out. So all of a sudden he wakes up and he's like, oh my gosh, like you're all dead. And Millard, he's the invisible boy. I believe he's voiced by Cameron King, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, well, none of us are dead. And so Olive was like, Miss Peregrine saw you on the ferry. We've come to get you. And the little island off of Wales is called Cairnholm, by the way. I should have mentioned that earlier. And it's a really crappy little island. There's one hotel, one bar, one landline. There's like 0 phones on the entire island. Holy cow. Okay. And so he can't call for help. So he ends up entering what they call a time loop. And he's, all of a sudden, he's walking around and, see that cool thing I did do with my tongue? I can do a cool thing with my tongue. It's amazing. But anyway, so lo and behold, he finds out that he's back in September 3rd, on September 3rd, 1943. And he's like, a bomb fell on you in 1943. And they're like, it is 1943. And so they go to the children's home, and that's where they meet Miss Peregrine. And so Jake, he's like, I'm just ordinary. And Emma is like, no, you're not. Only a peculiar can enter a time loop. And he's like, well, wouldn't I have found out my peculiarity by this point in time? Because I believe there are like 12 kids at the children's home. There's Emma Bloom. She has, she can control air. There's Olive. She has like firepower, I guess. She can create fire. There's Millard. He's invisible. Hugh, who is played by Milo Parker, something like that. He has bees living inside of him. There's Horace. They all have last names, but we're not going to mention them because it just takes too long. There's Horace, and he has prophetic dreams. There's Fiona, she's played by Georgia Pemberton. She can make things grow. There's the twins, whom I don't know their names, but you don't hear them talk or anything like that, and you actually don't figure out their peculiarity until the end of the movie. Yeah. And they just call them the twins. They don't necessarily have a name. There's Claire. She is, I don't know who she's played by, but she has a mouth at the back of her head. Bronwyn has, like, super strength. She has, like, the strength of 10 men. And I'm trying to think of... I want to make sure, because my favorite character of the whole movie I'm going to mention last, but I'm just trying to make sure that I have all of them. Okay, so I think I have all of them. My favorite character of all time, oh my gosh, it's Enoch O'Connor. He's a dead riser. He can bring things back to life. He can take the life of one thing and bring it into another thing. So, even in the book, I liked Enoch, and then I found out that he was played by Finley Macmillan. Oh my gosh. I like fangirling so hard over him. He's so amazing. He's such a good actor. But this is actually his first movie. And he's actually Scottish, which he has a really thick Scottish accent in the movie. And I was like, ooh, he's faking that really well. And then I found out, oh, hey, he's actually Scottish. And I was like, ah! It was so amazing. And, fun fact about Finley Macmillan, he is 20. And this is, he played in a show a couple years back called, like, Waterloo Road, I think is what it was called. It's a Scottish show. I was like, ooh, I'm so gonna watch this. And then I watched like a couple clips. I'm like, I can't even understand what they're saying because they're just like so Scottish, but it's amazing. But anyway, so he's a dead riser. And these are all of the peculiar children that are living in this time loop. And lo and behold, Miss Peregrine is what they call an embreed. She can turn into a bird, and she also is a time manipulator. So she can go back 24 hours, and embreeds typically pick, according to the movie, a safe time and a safe place. But on the night of September 3rd, 1943, the Germans dropped a bomb on the roof of the children's home. And she's like, okay, I can only go back 24 hours. So they've been living in the same loop, September 3rd, 1943, for like the past 50-some years. And they're like, ugh. And they can't go outside because a couple minutes in the year 2016, and the years would catch up. They'd be like 90 years old or something like that. So anyway, Jacob is